June 2014. The Mediterranean sun bathes the ancient limestone of Malta, a land of history and sieges. Thousands of kilometers from the arid highways of Australia, a 60-year-old man, powerfully built, his gaze hardened by decades of conflict, faces an exile imposed not by force of arms, but by the stroke of a pen. Alex Vella, the lifelong national president of the Rebels, Australia's largest and most feared outlaw motorcycle club. He has just received the news. While visiting the island of his birth, Australian Immigration Minister Scott Morrison has cancelled his permanent residency visa. After 46 years of building a life and an empire in Australia, he is forbidden from returning home. His reign didn't end in a shootout or a courtroom, but with a bureaucratic decision, silent and lethal. Here lies the central enigma of our story. How did a man who began his life in absolute poverty, in a Maltese cave with no electricity or running water, a functionally illiterate immigrant, come to rise as the supreme leader of an organization of over 2,000 members, considered by authorities to be one of the greatest criminal threats in the country? His life is a paradox. On one hand, the narrative of the self-made immigrant, a tireless worker who amassed an astonishing fortune, with a portfolio of properties, a fleet of luxury cars, including a Rolls-Royce and a Bentley, and one of Australia's finest Harley-Davidson collections. On the other, the image projected by law enforcement, a ruthless kingpin who built his empire on the foundations of drug trafficking, extortion, and violence. Was he a misunderstood business genius, the dark embodiment of the Australian dream, or a crime lord who knew how to exploit the margins of society to build a kingdom in his own image? This documentary aims to unravel the myth of the Maltese Falcon, the man who ruled an empire and lost it all on a legal technicality. To understand a man like Alex Vella, we must first understand the world that shaped him. The Australia of the 1960s and 70s was a society and cultural ferment. Influenced by American and British countercultures, a generation of young people sought an identity of their own, far from the rigid norms of their parents. In this breeding ground, the outlaw motorcycle clubs, or OMCGs, were born. These clubs emerged as havens for men who felt alienated by conventional society, many of them war veterans who couldn't find their place. They were founded on ideals of freedom, an unbreakable brotherhood, and a visceral hostility toward authority. In their early days, they were not criminal enterprises in the modern sense. Crime was a byproduct of their lifestyle. Bar fights, traffic violations, public disorder, acts that reinforced their identity as rebels. It was a world with its own rules, its own hierarchy, and its own code of honor. Into this world, on the verge of exploding, landed Alessio Emanuele Vela. Born in 1943, he was one of 11 children in a devout Catholic family in Malta. His childhood wasn't just humble, it was precarious. The family lived in a cave near Busquet, without basic comforts like electricity or running water. By the age of 8, he was already working in construction, hauling buckets of water for pennies a day. This brutal labor instilled in him a relentless work ethic, but it robbed him of a formal education, leaving him functionally illiterate for the rest of his life. In 1967, the Vela family, like so many others, emigrated to Australia seeking a better life. They settled in Horsley Park, on the outskirts of Sydney, where they ran a strawberry farm. Young Alex embodied the immigrant work story. He held 2 or 3 jobs at a time, from a construction laborer to a nightclub bouncer. Simultaneously, he channeled his strength and discipline into boxing. His career was promising, and he went on to win the Maltese light heavyweight championship title in 1978. It was in the ring that he earned the nickname that would define him, the Maltese Falcon. But neither the farm nor the ring could contain his ambition. In 1969, a man named Clint Jacks had founded a motorcycle club in Brisbane called the Confederates. Its insignia, a Confederate flag with a skull, was a statement of principles. They were rebels, outlaws. The club would soon change its name to the Rebels. In 1972, Alex Vella, passionate about motorcycles, joined them and founded the Sydney chapter. His rise was meteoric. His charisma, imposing physical presence, and natural cunning set him apart immediately. By 1973, at just 20 years old and only 1 year after joining, he was already the national president of the Rebels. Vela's trajectory represents a dark and paradoxical version of the immigrant dream. His greatest disadvantages in conventional society, his illiteracy, his immigrant status, became his greatest assets in the world of outlaw clubs. This universe was not an academic meritocracy, but a meritocracy of strength, loyalty, and ambition. His inability to read a phone book was irrelevant. His ability to command respect with a single glance was everything. He didn't succeed despite being an outcast. He succeeded because he chose a world where being an outcast was the fundamental requirement to rule. Under Alex Vella's leadership, the Rebels ceased to be a brotherhood of rebels and became an empire. During his 4 decades on the throne, the club experienced unprecedented expansion. From a handful of scattered chapters, they grew to become Australia's largest OMCG, with a structure that, at its peak, boasted over 70 chapters and a force of between 1,000 and 2,000 members nationwide. This growth wasn't organic, it was strategic. Vela imposed iron discipline and a military-inspired hierarchical structure. The club's constitution, though publicly presented as a non-profit for Harley-Davidson enthusiasts, demanded absolute loyalty. A member could only join once and could never join another club. The expansion transcended Australian borders, establishing chapters in New Zealand and eventually in over 20 countries, turning the Confederate skull into a global brand of organized crime. As the club grew, so did its leader's fortune. Vela always maintained that his wealth came from legitimate businesses, motorcycle importation, and shrewd real estate investment, financed, he claimed, by a $225,000 AUD insurance payout from several traffic accidents. But Australian law enforcement agencies painted a very different picture. Police intelligence and court documents allege that, under Vela's command, the rebels had transformed into a high-risk criminal threat. They were accused of controlling drug trafficking networks, primarily methamphetamine, cocaine, and cannabis, money laundering, extortion, arms trafficking, and using extreme violence to defend their territory. One documented example was a drug network operated by a rebels member from 1999 to 2003, which generated at least $1.5 million. Vela, however, moved with astonishing skill on the razor's edge of the law. His most serious conviction dates back to 1990 for possession of a commercial quantity of marijuana, for which he served a periodic detention sentence. He was arrested for other violent crimes but never convicted, allowing him to cultivate a public image as a victim of police persecution. The first major turning point came in 1995. Under Operation Panzer, police conducted a massive raid on his Sydney property, seizing $3 million worth of assets, including his luxury cars and 44 Harley-Davidsons, on the charge of being proceeds of crime. But Vela fought back in court. In an astonishing legal victory, he managed to have all his property returned, cementing his legend as untouchable. The 2000s brought an escalation of public violence. The biker wars intensified. The most notorious conflict was the brutal turf war against the Rock Machine Club in Western Australia, which began in 2009 and included firebombings and assassination attempts. This brazen violence attracted unprecedented media and police attention, shattering any illusion that the clubs were mere associations of friends. The exponential growth of the rebels and the consolidation of Vela's power were not parallel phenomena, they were symbiotic. The club provided the structure and the army for Vela's ambition, while his strategic direction and absolute control fueled the club's expansion. The police were clear. The rebels had remained cohesive and disciplined, thanks to Vela's strong leadership. The man and the organization had merged. They were one and the same. Alex Vella wasn't just the leader of the rebels, he was the rebels. Vela's rise and the rebels' expansion was a journey decades in the making. It all began in 1967, when a young Alex Vella emigrated to Australia. Just 2 years later, in 1969, the rebels were born in Brisbane, then known as the Confederates. In 1972, Vela joined the club, founding the Sydney chapter, and by 1973, with astonishing speed, he was its national president. As his power grew, he proved his physical prowess in 1978 by winning the Maltese boxing title. The 1990s marked his first serious brushes with the law. He was convicted for marijuana possession in 1990, and in 1995, police launched the massive Operation Panzer against his property. The 2000s saw the rebels' global expansion and a brutal escalation in the biker wars, highlighted by the violent conflict with the Rock Machine Club that erupted in 2009. The state's response arrived in 2012 with the creation of Task Force Aero, designed to dismantle them. The beginning of the end was written in 2014, when his visa was canceled while he was visiting Malta, and the final death blow came in 2015, when the High Court of Australia confirmed his permanent exile. The audacity of the rebels and the escalating violence on Australia's streets provoked a response from the state on a scale never seen before. In 2012, the Australian government launched Task Force Aero, a national, multi-agency operation with a single clear mandate to disrupt, disable, and dismantle the criminal activities of the rebels' motorcycle club. This was not a simple series of raids. Aero was composed of 14 police and intelligence agencies, a state machine designed to crush its target. The impact was immediate and devastating. In its first year of operation alone, the task force resulted in over 330 arrests and more than 500 charges laid against rebels, members, and associates. The pressure was systematic, relentless, and coming from all directions. The climax of this war, however, would not be an armed confrontation. It would be a masterstroke, bureaucratic and lethal. In June 2014, Alex Vella, at 60 years of age, traveled to Malta to visit his family. It was the mistake the Australian government had been waiting for. With Vella out of the country, the immigration minister, Scott Morrison, executed his plan. Invoking the character provisions of the Migration Act, he personally canceled Vella's residency visa. The official justification was based on confidential intelligence reports from police and the Australian Crime Commission, which designated him as a person of bad character due to his leadership of a criminal organization. The timing was one of surgical, strategic precision. In the past, authorities had tried to revoke his visa, but Vella was always physically in Australia, allowing him to entangle the process in long, costly legal challenges. By waiting until he was abroad, the government left him legally stranded, unable to return to fight from within the system he knew so well. The news hit the Australian underworld like a bomb. It was a massive blow to the 2,000-member organization. To compound the chaos, just days after the news of Vela's exile, his right-hand man and National Sergeant-at-Arms, Simon Rasic, died unexpectedly from complications following surgery. In a matter of days, the rebels' empire had been decapitated. The emperor was in exile, and his chief enforcer was dead. The organization was left rudderless, adrift in a sea of uncertainty and vulnerability. The police braced for what seemed inevitable, a bloody internal power struggle. The fall of Alex Vella revealed a fundamental shift in the state's strategy. For decades, Vella had proven himself a master at subverting the criminal justice system. Another raid or another criminal charge would likely have ended the same way. So the government didn't try to beat him at his own game. Instead, it identified a unique, non-criminal vulnerability. After 46 years in the country, Vela had never become an Australian citizen. Legally, he was still a guest. Instead of needing proof beyond a reasonable doubt for a crime, the minister only needed to satisfy the character test of the Migration Act, a much lower discretionary threshold. It was a move that bypassed the entire criminal justice apparatus Vela was prepared for. It wasn't a battle, it was an administrative checkmate. From his forced exile in Malta, Alex Vella waged one last desperate legal battle. His lawyers argued he had been denied natural justice, a fundamental principle of common law. The core of his appeal was that the minister's decision had been based on protected information, secret evidence that neither Vela nor his legal team was allowed to see, thus making it impossible for them to mount a proper defense. But the fight was in vain. After losing in the federal court, his last hope rested on a special leave application to appeal to the High Court of Australia, the nation's highest judicial body. On October 16, 2015, the court issued its verdict, a unanimous decision not to hear his appeal. A court spokesperson called it the end of the road for Alex Vella. His exile was now permanent. The leader's definitive absence triggered the collapse the police had anticipated. Detective Superintendent Deb Wallace, head of the New South Wales anti-gang squad, stated that the rebels' leadership structure was in disarray and that they were witnessing members handing in their colors, a symbolic gesture of final surrender. Loyalty, the pillar upon which Vela had built his empire, began to erode. Deep internal discontent emerged when members were ordered to contribute financially to Vela's legal fund, all while reports surfaced that he was still earning over 100,000 euros a year from the rent on the club's national headquarters. This financial demand, perceived as a betrayal, broke the covenant of brotherhood. The club began to fracture. Without Vela's unifying and feared presence, instability and infighting multiplied. High-ranking members began to patch over to rival clubs at a rate police had never seen. The once monolithic empire of the rebels was crumbling from within, a process of decay marked by leadership disputes and desertions that continues to this day. Alex Vela's legacy is complex and twofold. On one hand, he was the architect of the largest and most disciplined outlaw motorcycle club in Australian history, transforming a small brotherhood of rebels into a criminal enterprise with a global reach. On the other, and perhaps more importantly, his fall set a formidable precedent. It demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of using immigration law as a weapon against non-citizen organized crime figures. Since then, this tactic has been widely used to deport numerous leaders of other OMCGs, changing the rules of the game in the fight against organized crime. However, this strategy has not been without unintended consequences. While the rebels weakened in Australia, Vela founded a new chapter in Malta. Furthermore, the systematic deportation of other bikers has been criticized for simply exporting the problem, transplanting Australian-style organized crime to countries like New Zealand. The rapid disintegration of the club following Vela's exile underscores the inherent weakness of any organization so centralized around a single autocratic figure. Vela's greatest strength, his absolute control, became the club's fatal flaw once he was removed. The empire could not survive its emperor. The story of Alex Vella is a reflection on the nature of power, identity, and irony. The man who turned his back on society to build his own kingdom outside the law was ultimately defeated not by bullets or handcuffs, but by the prosaic and inescapable laws of the state he never fully joined. He lived as a rebel, but was defeated as a foreign resident. A final, bitter paradox in a life defined by the relentless pursuit of a power that in the end proved to be as fragile as a visa paper.